welcome to my channel and to Spellbinders Large Die of the Month. The large die of the month is a beautiful bay window, and it also includes a cute little boy pulling a sled. I'm not going to be using him in this card, but I have used it in another card, which I'll show you at the end of the video. Everything for this card has been cut from Color Wheel cardstock, blush, and tutu, with little hints of gold and mint. The sentiment for this card is from the Better Press of the Month, and you're going to see this cute background on another card, which I'll show you later. And it includes 3 press plate sentiments, and I'm going to be using Sending Frosty Wishes. The background for this card is going to be created with the 3D embossing folder of the month. This is an awesome brick background. The dimension is really incredible. Okay, so let's get started putting some of these die cuts together. I have already laid out the string of lights and the decorated tree. And as you can see, both are going to be accented with blush and tutu cardstock. Let's get started before I lose these little bits and pieces. The Christmas tree, which is going to be sitting inside, has been die cut from mint cardstock. I was working with a scrap and it wasn't quite big enough to fit the entire tree on, so you can see it's cut off. But that won't matter because it will be hidden by the window frame. That was a good opportunity to use up a scrap of cardstock. The die for the little ornaments and the lights cut multiples. I've got them all laid out, alternating between the tutu and the chiffon. Whenever I have to work with small die cuts, I like to try to get them in place as quickly as possible because, I don't know, they have a way of disappearing on me. So the sooner that these are attached to a larger die cut, the better. And of course, a jewel picker, in my opinion, is an essential tool when working with itty bitty die cuts. They're inexpensive and definitely worth the investment. Okay, yay, all done. Just going to show you what I have done. I decided that I wanted a patterned paper background to give the effect of wallpaper. So the first thing that I did was die cut this patterned paper, which is so pretty with its gold and white with little cranberry dots in the pattern. And this comes from the Merry Moments paper pad. And then to cut the actual window frame with these little inset dies. And I used low tack tape to hold them in place as I ran it through the die cutter. And then that gave me the window opening. These window trim pieces so that they are completely independent of the window. They are set back inside these outline dies and run through the die cutter. And like so. Oops, I got it upside down. Okay. like that. And so what I find when working with dies that have an intricate pattern, like these little diamond details at the top, I like to run it back and forth in my die cutter 2 to 3 times to ensure that that is going to cut cleanly. Is all of my die cutting tips, and now we can start putting this together. Also point out that I like my dies first of all to be laid out so I can see clearly all of the different components that go to make up any element for that die set. And so what I do is buy magnetic heat covers. The magnetic sheet is strong, and I just simply cut them up into pieces so that they are consistent with the size of the die set, and then store them into a storage pocket. That way I can see clearly all of the dies that I'm dealing with, and plus they're nice and secure and safe. Okay, let's put the window together. First thing that I'm going to do is adhere the drapes like that, and then the little tree is going to be sitting in the middle. The only thing that I do want to be careful is to position the tree so firstly it's centered, but I also don't want the bottom of the tree covering up this grill work that's at the bottom of the window. So I can see, because I'm working with patterned paper, I can see how it's going to line up using the patterned paper as a reference. And this window has some score lines, so you can see, or sorry, etched line. No, they're score lines. So you can see exactly how to center the tree. I am going to use just a little bit of Scotch tape to hold them in place initially. There we go. And then the next thing that I'm going to do is then adhere the drapes behind it. And so the drapes are going to help hold these frames in place. I'm going to line them up to the outside edge. And there are these score lines that are here at the top of the center and then angled on the edge. And so I'm going to line it up to those lines. Oh, and I put my adhesive on the wrong side. Okay. And you can kind of see where the adhesive goes, because of course this does have some etch detail on it, and you just want to put the adhesive where there is no detailing. So I'm lining it up to those score lines that are at the top and then along the outside edge of the window, and then press it into place. And then I'll do the same thing. This one, place my adhesive at that plain band at the top, along the side, and at the bottom. Again, I will line it up with the top pair of score lines and along the outside edge of the window. It will sit on top like so. So I want this to have some dimension, And this is another way that I'm going to also secure these window frames on the side, especially for that inside window. I am going to use these thin foam strips. The first thing I'm going to do is go around windows. Okay, yep. Get rid of this stuff. And I am going to tip this into the top of my background. Those foam squares are so sticky. There we go. So now this piece is going to go behind the grill work. It's going to snip this portion away. And I'll do the same on the side pieces. There, now it looks nice and clean without any little shadows of the patterned paper. So we'll go ahead and just pop some adhesive. And just line up those outside edges. And there we go. There is also this trim piece, which goes along the top of the window. So this mound of snow is cut along the bottom so that it will sit right on top of the molding. Okay, the molding can go on next. And I'll just run a thin line of adhesive right along the top of the molding. Need to use my reverse tweezers to hold that in place until the adhesive sets, which will just take a couple of seconds. One more little trim piece, which I have done tone on tone. Mound of snow is being secured to the top of the window. I will go ahead, and there are etch lines to follow to position this. And that completes the window. So the only thing that is left are these pretty lights, which I'm just going to add right along the bottom of the mound of snow. To get the ends positioned where I want them. Again, I'm going to go back to my reverse tweezers. So that's a nice thing when you're working with these thin die cuts. You have some flexibility in terms of positioning them. So now for the background. This die set also comes with a landscape die, and I cut some white cardstock. This is the 3D embossing folder of the month, that brick, which is going to sit in the background. I just want to point something out to you. My panel was a full A2 size, and when I embossed it, it literally, the width was okay, but the length, I lost 1/4 of an inch. And I thought, what did I not measure my cardstock correctly? So I actually cut a second panel, and I was extremely attentive, making sure that it was 5.5 inches tall. Ran it through again, and the same thing. So that is something to keep in mind. For one of the cards that I am making, I actually cut my panel 4.25 inches wide, and not 5.5, but 5.75 of an inch, to ensure that I would have a full A2 size background. So something to keep in mind. This is extremely dimensional, so obviously that is what accounts for shortening of the length. But anyways, I thought I would just point that out. So I am going to go ahead and adhere my background to an A2 size card base. These are really thin streams, but I want to try to get really good coverage so that it will lie nice and flat. I have had comments from a couple of people that they love the look of an embossed background, but they don't love the edges. And so the key to getting a nice clean edge is to ensure that it is well adhered. I'm actually going to just pop that under some weight for seconds to let that dry. I can start laying out how this is going to sit on this snowy background. I'm going to pop this sentiment up. I am going to do a little bit of trimming, and when I trim the edges of my background that has been already adhered to the card base, I like to use my guillotine, my big guillotine. Just find that it gives it a much cleaner look, and you can see that my edges don't align along this side or the bottom. So I'm going to start with this edge because I know that this is completely square, so I can push that up right at the top. I'm just lining up right on the edge here. Having a press plate is very helpful when you're doing this. You can see this is a nice clean cut now. I'm going to trim off just a hair along the bottom. There we go. This already has lots of dimension because of course we use the foam between the window and the background. But this piece is floating, so I'm going to add some foam to make sure that it doesn't get crushed. Go ahead and take the backing paper off and add some adhesive to the back of the window. I am going to put my sentiment at the bottom, so I'll put this in the upper 2/3 of the card, trying to center it side to side. Then I'll just center this sentiment, center point of the grill as a reference. And I'll finish off these little Christmas light bulbs, a touch of shine, using Nouveau Crystal Drops Morning Dew. And I'm applying it because it's not round. I start by depressing the bottle slightly as I start at the top, and then lift the pressure off and pull down to the bottom of the little light bulb. I'm also going to add some shine to the ornaments. And And so this is always such a nice finishing touch because it does add a little bit of nice dimension. And there we go, the large die of the month with this sweet window done up in some pretty pastel tones, which I love for a Christmas card. And I said that I would show you, this is the little guy pulling a sled with presents. And so that is another element that is included in this die set. And for this card, I use the adorable Better Press of the Month. I just love it. I think it's adorable. And I also use the sentiment from that set. And you can see that, that I have also included a couple of die cuts of the trees on this card. So friends, I hope that you enjoyed this video. Spellbinders Large Die of the Month is fabulous, and honestly, the entire club release is just awesome. You're going to love it. So thank you for joining me, and as always, I appreciate your visit.